It was late at night, we're driving back, and I'm terrified because I have a feeling that everybody is drunk, including the driver, and we're going to go off the side of the mountain. No one will ever find us. And I was so sure of this, and I'm trying to figure out what do I do, and I heard this voice say to me, tell them to stop the car, because if you don't stop the car, you're going to die here. Can't die here tonight, can't die here tonight, can't die here tonight, can't die here tonight, can't die here tonight.
If this is your first time here, welcome. And if you've been with me since the beginning, thank you for continuing to make room for these stories. As you listen today, if something in Tina's story stays with you, I'd love to hear what it was. You can join the conversation with us on Instagram at Change Happened Podcast. And don't forget to stay with me through the credits for Tina's final echo. One line from her story that will stay with you long after you've heard it. Tina Erwin built a career around discipline, responsibility, security, and facts. But running quietly beneath that life was something she couldn't explain. An instinct, a warning, and sometimes a voice. Long before Tina understood what any of it meant, she was trying to learn what it meant to trust it. I'm Heather Holt, and this is Change Happened, Then What?, where change becomes the story. Welcome to part 1 of Tina Erwin's journey.
I grew up in North Carolina, in Greensboro. And I grew up, in the 50s, 60s, and I was in college, late 60s, early 70s. And it's an extremely turbulent time. And to understand how turbulent it is, people are burning buildings down. Gee, that sounds like today. Anyway, they're angry at the Vietnam War. It's been going on. You sit down to supper, and every night you get a body count. And it's so nauseating, and you don't know what you can do about it. And I'm watching this on the news every night, and I'm trying to think, here I am, a teenager, in this crazy world. How am I going to make a living in a world that feels this crazy? In a world that feels that it's out of balance, which, by the way, it still feels like the world is out of balance. And I remember as a child wondering, what am I going to do?
She wouldn't find that answer by staying where she'd always been. The first real test for Tina came when she left home. She discovered that trusting herself might mean disagreeing with the person everyone else has been told to follow.
What is my life going to be like? And so when I was in college, I had the opportunity to travel. And this part's really important because when you travel, when you leave your country, you grow up literally overnight. So I went with this group, and there were 17 of us that traveled from Greensboro, North Carolina, in unair-conditioned cars to El Salvador, which took us a lot of days to do. And I've never been away from home even to spend the night before, so you grow up very quickly. And while I was there, Salvador went to war with Honduras, and they're dropping bombs out of, Honduras is dropping bombs on Salvador, but they're dropping them out of the plane by hand. Well, we were there a couple of months, and we realized we had to get out because, we're in a war, and this isn't a good thing. And the embassy would not help us, wouldn't talk to us, wouldn't even help us contact our parents. And maybe that isn't their job. But it felt very much like, as the citizens, we were abandoned. And so we had to get out. We think we had to get out of the country. So while we're getting the vehicles together to do that, we're leaving San Salvador. We're on the Santa Ana Highway, and a drunk in a gigantic Ford Fairlane plowed into the back of the car I was in and basically totaled the car. So the car was totaled, and we had to go back into El Salvador, and they're still bombing the city, and we have to get out. We can't. It's just.
They eventually made it to Guatemala City. Once there, the professor told them exactly what he wanted them to do next.
We're having a meeting about, the professor who was running all this said, you all have to, we're all going to go back into Salvador in a couple of days and live there while we get this car fixed, and then we're going to drive back. And I was incredulous because I thought, I'm sorry, we've just been in a war. While we were there, there was an earthquake, there were volcanoes erupting. We only have so much money, and we don't know how long it's going to take and how long this war is going to be. And we have to start college, so why don't most of us get on an airplane and go home? I just don't think this is safe for us. I think it's time to go home. And what this professor did was a very important point for me, because he said, you are a traitor. You're a terrible person. You need to stand with us and stand with your, the others in your class so that we can all, support this person. Because, that's your view. But I know in my soul, I can't stay here any longer. I'm flying out. And as I boarded the plane, 7 other women followed me. And I said, you guys didn't say anything while this guy's excoriating me. And they said, we were terrified to speak up. But you showed us that you are the only one who's making any sense, and we really need to leave. And so we flew back. And what it told me was, it was a huge lesson, because just because someone is in an authority position over you doesn't mean that what they're telling you is the right thing. Doesn't mean they're showing anybody any kind of good judgment. But if what they're saying doesn't ring true and could put you in danger, you have to speak up, not just for yourself, but for others. And that lesson was huge, because when you're in the military and people work for you, you're responsible for them. You have to look out for what's their greatest good as well. It was a huge lesson.
At that point, Tina could still call it judgment, knowing when something wasn't right, knowing when to speak up. But 2 years later, that explanation would become much harder to hold on to. We'll be back in just a moment. This episode is brought to you by Pure Energy Apothecary. When life gets busy, taking care of yourself often becomes the first thing to fall away. Pure Energy Apothecary creates handcrafted, small batch wellness products designed to help you slow down and care for both your body and your mind. One of my personal favorites is their magnesium body butter. It's become part of my nightly routine and helps me unwind after long days. If you'd like to learn more, visit pureenergyvt.com and discover why Pure Energy Apothecary has become one of our trusted partners. And to get 20% off, use code PURECHANGE.
Years later, I lived in Colombia, and I taught English at the Meyer Language Center to people who had never heard English spoken. So I speak a whole lot of Spanish. So again, I felt this was the beginning of the feeling that someone's looking out for me. And I had several other situations where we were on a mountainside in the Andes Mountains. I told them to stop the car, and we all got out of the car. And they had a flat tire. No one knew. And they thought I had saved everyone in the car. And I, of course, burst into tears. And then the guy I was dating was not drunk, and he drove us home. And so another really valuable lesson is when something feels wrong, it's wrong. Again, Karma's like, are you really getting this message? Make sure you pay attention and listen to us when we're telling you and warning you. And I felt like that was that a psychic message? I don't know. Was that a guardian angel? God, I hope so. Because they were absolutely right. Had I not stopped the car, we would have gone over the side. We couldn't have controlled the car much longer.
Tina still didn't know exactly what that voice was, but by then, ignoring it no longer seemed like an option. And the life she was about to build would place her inside a world defined by structure, rank, rules, and responsibility. The United States Navy.
You know, I watched these Navy recruiters on campus, and they were just adorable. But it's the 70s. The Vietnam War is still raging all this time. And people hate the military, and I'm watching this thinking, that's an interesting, I'm just observing all this, and then the next thing I know, you know, I graduate, and I'm trying to get a job, and every time I walked in the door, the posted published salary would be cut in half because I had the wrong anatomy. And I thought, I'm going to spend the rest of my life fighting for equal pay. And I don't want to live like that. I want to get married. I want to have a career. I want to see the world. I want to live. I don't want to fight people all my life. And so I got dolled up, went down to see the Navy recruiter in my hometown, and he didn't know what to do with me. He said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I want to join the Navy. He finally comes back and he says, you know, you're a little overqualified to enlist. I said, why would I want to enlist? I want to be an officer. He said, well, we haven't had a female officer from the state of North Carolina in, I don't know, 7 to 10 years. I mean, we just basically never had anybody. And I said, well, you do now. And he said, okay. He walked my application to the Pentagon personally, flew to D.C. And so I was accepted and, you know, went to officer candidate school in the fall of 72. There were 95 women in my officer candidate school class. And 75% of the class, 75% of us, had lived overseas. And I thought that was absolutely fascinating. 60% of us spoke another language. And so I thought, well, gee, you know, all these experiences really have set me up for these moments. So this is a pretty cool thing.
One of those experiences eventually brought Tina to New London, Connecticut.
And along the way, I met this really sweet guy who was, you know, he was really interested in me, and we got engaged, and I got sent to New London because he was going to join the submarine force. So I was basically following him.
Her Navy career moved through several assignments, and eventually, Tina found herself at Submarine School with a job she had no intention of keeping.
It was very weird. I went to submarine school, and my job was to open mail for a lieutenant commander. And when I got there, they said, you know, I was Lieutenant JG by then, and they said, what would you like to do while you're here? He's yawning. I said, I want to teach class. And he said, women don't teach class. And I said, look, how hard can it possibly be? Men do it. Honestly, I thought that was screamingly funny, but he did not laugh. And so his meal was so boring. I said, can't you just let me go to instructor school? It'll get me out of your hair. It will not be hard. I'll just be away, and I'll be out of sight and out of mind, and then you won't have to deal with me. And they said, all right, you can go to instructor school. So I graduated. I was the first female officer to graduate from instructor school at Submarine School. And then I said, I want to teach class. And he said, well, we don't have any female instructors. And I said, why not? I can teach the classified material system, which you definitely need for all these submarines on the waterfront. You need somebody to teach this who really knows it inside out. So I was the first female instructor in the history of Submarine School. I was locked in a vault with 25 of the coolest guys you've ever seen all day. I worked on curriculum. I visited the submarines. I did inspections. I learned the force. I learned the men. I learned the language. I learned how to communicate, because you have to speak their language. They do not have to speak yours. You have to know how to communicate with these men so that they can hear you. But if you do, and you can earn their respect, changes your life, because, good God, they just eat you for lunch.
Tina had entered the Navy determined not to let someone else decide what she was capable of. But leadership was teaching her something more than how to push through a closed door. She had to understand the people on the other side of it. Her next assignment would take her overseas again, and this time, the disciplined life Tina had built and the experiences she still could not explain would become much harder to keep separate.
And I just did well with that. In the meantime, my husband said, hey, would you like to go live in Italy? I said, yep, let's do that next. So we were sent to Naples, Italy. And by then, the psychic ability that had kind of always been there just exploded. But in the meantime, we had one interesting event after the other. And I was a communication officer for Naval Communication Area Master Station Mediterranean. And one of my jobs was to devise a plan to protect our transmitter and receiver sites from terrorist attacks.
The work depended on plans, procedures, knowing what could go wrong, and being prepared for it. But the experiences Tina was describing didn't fit neatly inside any of that. And in Italy, the two parts of her lives were no longer happening in separate places.
It was a really, really difficult job on some levels, but what made it even crazier was that we were in NATO buildings. Well, the NATO buildings were built by the Nazis, and every single building was haunted. You could hear the screams of the tortured if you were there alone at night. It was just absolutely terrifying.
After Italy, she would return to the United States. Her Navy career would continue, and so did the experiences she couldn't explain. For years, both existed inside the same life, and then Tina retired, and for a moment, she thought she knew what was coming next.
When I retired from the Navy, and I had this bizarre feeling that I was going to start a computer company, I don't know what I was thinking. Along the way, it's like everywhere I looked, there was a ghost. What is this?
And that question is where we end part 1 of Tina's journey. Because the experiences Tina had spent years learning not to ignore were about to ask something more of her. Next week, we'll find out what happened when Tina stopped asking "What is this?" and began confronting a very different question. What am I supposed to do with it? I'm Heather Holt, and this is Change Happened, Then What?, where change becomes the story. If something in Tina's story stayed with you, I'd love to hear what it brought up for you. You can share your own story through the What Changed Me Challenge at changehappenedpodcast.com. And if you know someone who might find themselves somewhere inside Tina's story, send them this episode. That's how these stories keep moving forward.
And you have too much to do this lifetime.
This episode was written, edited, and produced by me, Heather Holt, here at Holt Hill Studios, with supervision and multiple interruptions from Waylon and Dalton. Until next week, I hope you keep finding your way.
The climb must hurt to lift the soul. The fight must forge the shining whole. So welcome, wait and call it grace. No progress blooms without the break.